Guys, I want to give an update on my current hair loss situation because I got an interesting comment on my last video where I was deadlifting about the current state of my hairline, and what the individual mentioned is that it looks like my hairline has actually receded a little bit, and unfortunately your eyes are not tricking you. That is accurate, but I want to state emphatically that it is not because of androgenetic alopecia. It is actually, paradoxically enough, because of my hair transplant. Interesting, since people get hair transplants to avoid hair loss, yet I seem to be getting hair loss. But I just want to explain why that's happening and why it's not anything to worry about and why it's actually fairly common. Because I spoke with my doctor about it, and it seems to happen in about 1 in 4 individuals who get a hair transplant, about 25% or so. And the way it happens is that the process of actually extracting a follicle from the back of your head to the front of your head is something that's so traumatizing to the follicle that it can actually cause the hair growing from the follicle to fall out, in addition to several hairs surrounding it. And that's why I actually have a little bit of diffusion up here. It looks like the hair density isn't nearly as thick as it was before, as well as a little bit more recession at the bottom. And that's why I look kind of like a diffuse Norwood 2 right now. And the good news is that it is temporary, like I stated, so it is going to go away eventually, but it usually takes several months. And that's why a lot of hair transplant doctors will actually not take their after pictures of their patients in their testimonial boards until about a year later, because a lot of people do not get the full benefit of a hair transplant until a year later after they've recovered from a shock loss. And I only got my hair transplant back in April 25th of 2016, so it's been fairly recent, so I am not holding out hopes that this hair transplant is going to fully recover anytime soon. It's still going to take several more months. But if it does happen to you, don't worry about it. There are options that you can utilize to give yourself the cosmetic appearance of a full head of hair while you're recovering from the shock loss. One of my favorite lines of defense, and something I don't use too often, but I will use on important occasions, is Topic. And, Topic is fine, but there's plenty of other concealers out there that are just as good, like Kabuki. I mean, I think that they're about the same, and there's also some generic variants as well. I mean, whatever you can find that's cheap and effective and has good reviews on Amazon.com is probably something I would go with. But think of it as makeup for your hair. It works on existing hair follicles, so it's not going to work on like a bald spot on the back of the head unless there's hair there to begin with. It's not going to work on your forehead or your temples or anything unless there's hair there, because the fibers will blend with the follicles to give them a fuller appearance. So I will use it like on a date, or if it's an important social event, if I'm going to a meeting at work or something like that. But I won't use it when I'm working out, or if I'm like just like at work doing like my daily routine or anything like that. Actually, when it comes to physical activity, I'd probably avoid using it, because like when you're sweating excessively, it can actually like kind of like create this green liquid, so it looks like you're sweating green, like you're a fucking leprechaun or something, and it's pretty repulsive looking. That's usually not something I have to worry about, because my style of training is usually more along the lines of powerlifting, so I usually take long rest periods. But if you're an endurance athlete, you do a lot of high volume, high rep training like CrossFit or something like that, then yeah, chances are you'll sweat green if you're wearing Topic. But other than that, nothing to worry about. It looks pretty good. So other than that, I might as well just give a few updates on my current routine. I am not using Nizoral still. Nizoral is that shampoo which has the active ingredient ketoconazole, and I haven't noticed any hair loss as a result. In fact, the texture of my hair has improved, because ketoconazole, one of its notorious side effects is that it tends to really dry out the hair, give it almost like a straw-like texture. So it hasn't caused me to lose any hair, and it's improved the texture of my hair. It's still a little dry because of all the propylene glycol I put on it as a result of the minoxidil, but it's not nearly as bad as it was before. So I think it really kind of doesn't prove, but it helps support my hypothesis that Nizoral is actually not an essential treatment. It's not that important, because even though there is some science behind ketoconazole as an anti-androgen, that's the active ingredient of Nizoral, it doesn't stay on the scalp long enough for it to effectively absorb. I mean, if you compare it to something like minoxidil, the recommended time is 2 to 4 hours before you wash it off, and so that has much more time to actually penetrate the scalp. So what I'm using right now is not nearly as extensive as what I've used in the past. I just use finasteride, which is like the most basic systemic DHT blocker you can use. Blocks about 60% of DHT, works in about 90% of individuals. Very effective treatment. Side effects, contrary to popular belief, are extremely rare. I use minoxidil, which is still the most effective growth stimulant on the market, and I also use RU-58841 mixed with stamoxetine, which is another hair growth stimulant, often marketed as neogenic. And the RU-58841 I use only because I've been losing hair for a good while, so much so to the point where I don't feel finasteride alone is super effective. So having a topical anti-androgen on top of a systemic one, I think has really helped me maintain my current hair. And it's not something I'd recommend unless you are a hair loss veteran and finasteride isn't really effective for you anymore. But when it comes to determining the effectiveness of a drug, you usually want to wait like 8 months or so before that happens. So yeah, that's just what I'm currently going through right now, and I just want to give an update on my hair, why it looks a little bit more receded, and I just want to assure anyone who's considering a hair transplant that this is not anything you have to worry about, because the hair loss you get from shock loss is temporary, and it's worth it in the long run. I mean, you just got to remember, when it comes to hair loss, it's a marathon, not a sprint. So yeah, be strong and just stay confident. Take it easy.